Hello and welcome back to the Bobby and Beardy Show. I'm Bobby. That gentleman over there looks suspiciously like my co-host McBeardy. More on that in a bit. And today we will be reviewing the Bikeriders, which stars Jodie Comer, Austin Butler, and Tom Hardy. There are time codes below in that direction or in the description should you wish to use them. McBeardy, if that is even you, how the devil are you, sir?
I'm not going to keep up this bit. I am Beardy. I'm sadly going to be Beardy. No, I'm good. Tiring day. I can't remember if I told you I'm picking up new TV today.
No change there. Every other day, new TV.
True. Well, to be fair, my other one might be coming back on Thursday, so I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to have to do with my old one.
Have you got a boomerang TV situation? What's happening here?
Pretty much, yes.
I thought so.
No, I stumbled across a crazy deal for the new one, and there's a bit of a dry spell on films, so I might have to watch some films at home, and I may as well have a good TV for it, which clearly like... I had a bad TV beforehand.
No, absolutely. It was awful. Atrocious, I'd say. It does feel like that, actually. I'm looking at the release schedule, and this is like part of, I don't know, it's COVID maybe still, and then the actors and writers' strikes are affecting it, and yeah, it's like previously, like, last year or the year before, certainly, it'd be like every week there'd be like 2 movies I'd want to see, and I'd be like cramming them in. And at the moment, I'm like, when's the next one I want to see out?
Last year, I saw 2 films on my birthday that I actually wanted to see. This year, there's not so much. Like the Bikeriders, this film that we've seen is... I'm happy it came out. It's a good film, which we'll discuss. But in the next couple of weeks, there's a couple I want to see, nothing that you really want to see.
Well, you're the Spooky Dukin man, and there's some Spooky Dukin.
I am the Spooky Dukin man. So I'm happy about that.
There's a little bit of a dry spell coming up. We might have to, see what we can see on the streaming services.
There's a straight to streaming service in the UK film that I sent you a message about in the nearish future.
Yeah, it's end of July, isn't it, for that one? So that's when like other big films come
It's on topic.
I know, which is typical because we're talking about the Ministry of Henry Cavill doing a big punch or whatever. And what you said was correct. What I said was more accurate, I reckon, though.
There's degrees of correct.
I was hoping that was going to be out like the end of this month because I couldn't remember what you told me. And when I saw it was the end of July, I was like, I could have done with it being this month, to be honest.
Definitely.
I'm looking forward to that film, though. I don't understand why it's an Amazon Prime exclusive. Why won't you let me watch movies in the cinema? Please. Anyway.
Well, it came out in the cinema in the States, didn't it?
Yeah, but that doesn't count. They're America. The film we're talking about today came out in the States last year, but then got cancelled because of the Screen Actors strike. So none of they couldn't advertise it because no one could do nothing. So they went, well, we'll just release it next year then. So technically, this is a re-release for this film.
Love that.
Anyway, did you know this is our 21st episode, which means our podcast can now legally drink in America. Can't gamble though. No gambling. And also, I know.
Can we do a drunk episode at some point?
No, probably. I just want to. My bathroom is done. Apart from the fact I need to paint it, and I've had some annoying bad plastering work around my door that I've had to personally tidy up, which infuriates me. But once it is painted, hopefully by the end of this week, so next podcast we record, it should be done, unless we record one surprisingly early. We can invite you guys down for a lovely barbecue. And you can actually wash in my house.
We could do a in-person podcast. I can bring Mike and stuff as well.
Who's Mike? You don't have a setup. Why are you inviting extra people?
Are we also going to do an episode from your bathroom?
Yeah, sure. Why not? We'll have 2 cabs.
Me in the bath, you on the toilet.
Yeah. Oh, dear, dear. This conversation's going off the rails. Shall we crack on with the show?
100%. We shall.
Perfect. Well, today, as mentioned, we are talking about the Bikeriders, and here is the rundown. Written and directed by Jeff Nichols, the Bikeriders is inspired by the photo book of the same name by Danny Leon, or Lion, depending on how it's pronounced. It's spelt Leon, as in the French place, so I'm assuming. The film depicts the lives of the Vandals MC, who are a fictional version of the outlaw motorcycle club founded in the late 1960s. The actual motorbike club is founded well earlier than that, but that's kind of like where the story's set. Starring Jodie Comer as Kathy, Austin Butler as Benny, Tom Hardy as Johnny Davis, and Mike Faist from Challengers, back again. Big year. As Dan Leon himself. The film also features Michael Shannon, Norman Reedus, Boyd Holbrook, Damon Herriman, Boo Knapp, Emery Cohen, Carl. Oh my god, these aren't even hard names. I just lost my flow. Carl Glusman, Toby Wallace, and Happy Anderson. The release date was, like I mentioned, technically it was going to come out last year, but it came out on the 21st of June 2024. Budget of somewhere between 30 and 40 million. And the worldwide box office, as of 10 minutes ago, is, according to Box Office Mojo anyway, is 14 million. I would remind you, this isn't a film for everybody. And it's also going up against incredibly stiff competition of Inside Out 2, which is making bank right now.
Yes, it is.
Biggest film of the year. But by far, I think, at this point. But I can't
Yeah, I think so.
Didn't.
Well, Garfield was up there.
Oh, I hate that film so much.
Ooh, I just peeked. Sorry.
Don't you dare. Anyway, Beardy, what did you think of the movie? Let me know.
I very much enjoyed it. So I quite like documentary style films. We've discussed this in the past. I know that sometimes they're inaccurate, but things like the Elton John, the Queen movies, all very, very good in my opinion. Even though like historically inaccurate in some places. Even things like Gran Turismo, which again historically inaccurate in some places. I like realistic stories. I do like this interview style they had in this one. I liked that it was driven by that.
Absolutely. It's one of my main notes, actually.
Kind of. Storyline was good. Acting was good. Tom Hardy's voice was less annoying than some of his.
I was expecting big Tom Hardy silly voice, if I'm honest.
Yes.
The adverts made it really sound like he was doing a big silly voice, and he's not for the most part.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was a bit disappointed by that, but also kind of relieved. So it is what it is.
Like, don't get me wrong, there are points where his voice slides more back into his silly voice sometimes, but overall he controls it, and again it kind of works with the character. I think he was a brilliant cast for Johnny.
Yep.
Yeah, I think he was really well done for it. Like, he's the right character. He's kind of unassuming, but clearly can hold his own. He's got that air of kind of menacing, but in a he's a nice neighbour, but could also mess you up.
He's got a big, mild-mannered, kind of shuffle, quiet-ish, but you know at any moment he will absolutely just beat you up if he needs to. He'll have a knife fight. He'll have a big punch-up into some mud if you challenge his authority. If you go against one of his boys, he'll burn down your pub. Do not mess with him. He might be quiet and polite and a bit like, I'm just having a bike ride for most of it, but you know he'll switch. I think the casting in general is great. I think the acting and the performances across the board are really good. It just impressively so. Like, there's not a bad thing amongst any of it.
No.
Tom Hardy is fantastic. Jodie Comer, who's the lead, essentially, she's being interviewed by Dan Leon, played by Mike Faist, and that, as you kind of went on to, the interview style is a really good narrative tool. It's executed brilliantly again, because it can introduce new characters really quickly and in an organic fashion, and not have to give you too much information. There's a character who just kind of gets introduced as like he's a big guy. He's Big Jack, I think his name is, and another person who's like there in the interview's like, was it Jeff maybe, or something like that. And then you cut to him and you're like, I know who this guy is, and I kind of already know what he's about to do. And then you see, and it's it works really well. It works exceptionally in using time jumps, because this is happens over a course of like 10 or so years, so you don't have to have too much explanation. It's just like, they're in a different location for this interview. Hair's slightly different. Are there bits at the bottom saying the year or something? I can't quite remember, but if there are...
I don't think there was, but it's very heavily explained and like implied at least. But another thing I liked about the interview style is it has a built-in like fallacy that it doesn't have to be completely accurate, because it's her recollection of it.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be perfect, because it's how she remembers it, and we all know that people remember things differently. So I liked that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So basically, the plot of the story, which I've forgotten to ask you what the plot of the story was, and I've just forgotten, I've realised. So shall you tell me the plot?
Yeah. Well, it's a load of people who like their bikes. No, bikes. I was going to say bicycles and tricycles and shit. No.
They're all big fans of the Queen song, I Want to Ride My Bicycle. and they do.
I was a little sad that wasn't in this film. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of expected it to be, and it wasn't, and that upset me.
When was that released? Would it have been time appropriate? I can't even remember.
I don't know, if I'm honest. But basically, it's a small suburban town. I think it's actually based in Chicago. But
they have Chicago on the back, but it feels very small. Chicago doesn't feel very big if they're actually in Chicago. Or maybe Chicago got big recently. I don't know.
Maybe. But basically, someone enjoys their bikes. They have a little racing club. They turn it into a biking riding club. Very quickly turns into a biker gang, and then shenanigans follow. Very much tied between Johnny, who creates the bike riding club, and Benny, who kind of is just there. We never actually find out how he arrives. He's just there.
Just there.
And he's very much under Johnny's wing, and it's just controlled chaos from the offset. It's characters that shouldn't work together, but they do.
Yeah, you watch the small motorcycle group who just kind of want to ride bikes and have races and just drunken times together, and it slowly evolved into something much bigger, much more chaotic, much more dangerous than its original purpose. Uncontrollable, with so many like different elements and chapters, which are just variants of different groups under the same name that crop up across the country, and it becomes this just beast within itself, with its own like lore and legacy and rules, and it's a bit. I wouldn't want to be in charge. Let me tell you that much.
Would you be in a bike gang? Please let us know.
I mean, I'd be in a bicycle gang, I reckon.
I can see that with your stabilizers and stuff.
Tootling along. Get into a hill and
go. Flag on the back.
Get to one hill. I'm like, this is enough for me. I'm turning back. Actually, I'm not. No, thank you. I'm all out of puff. I saw a criticism online and of someone else's review while I was just grabbing some information and stuff, and they were saying that the movie kind of lacks a little something, a bit of. The note I've written down is from my interpretation was it lacks a bit of drive, pun not intended, and less. There's not much tension. Perhaps it's kind of just happening because of the narrative style of the interviews and things, but you don't. There's no like big.
No,
like long
I
sequence
agree.
Of this is bad.
Yeah, so Tegan and I discussed this as we were walking out the cinema. It's a slow burn. It's more of a social commentary rather than anything else. And the parallel that we drew is Civil War. Very similar style. Civil War, for its subject matter, is quite slow, but there are pockets of action, and the entire film is tense. You always feel uneasy during it.
Oh yeah.
This is a similar style, but the opposite end of the spectrum. It's, even though the subject matter is quite aggressive in some points, it's just a leisurely stroll through the story.
Yeah, absolutely. But and I read that like kind of review, or the start of it, and I went, yeah, I suppose that's true, but I don't really mind either. Like.
No,
didn't actually like that's a genuine criticism someone could have of the movie, that it never has that kind of big build up, like, and tension moment. But I'm like, I've just kind of enjoyed watching it. That's kind of my review of this film. I kind of just enjoyed watching it.
Yeah, it was a good story. It was acted well, and every character that you want to like, you like. Every character you're supposed to dislike, you dislike. Like it's just, someone said, let's make a film, when someone went, we're going to Ron seal this, it'll do exactly what it says, we're happy with this. And I can't really fault it, but I also can't say it had that, it didn't grip me as much as some of the films I've seen this year, but I also can't tell you that I didn't like it, because I do.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah, I left. And like, slow burn things, sometimes I criticize like films like that taking too long to tell not much. It's a 2-hour film. I didn't feel like it was the 2-hour film. It kept trundling along at a decent pace, again I think to that interview narrative technique they're using and the good performances, and I just genuinely quite enjoyed it. I've got no real problems with it. The cast is excellent. You've got like
Yes.
You've got your main leads there doing excellent work, and there's a love interest which kind of skips past. Really, they kind of like you see Kathy and Benny meet. He's just leaning, being muscly near a pool table, and then next thing you know, they're on a bike ride. Oh, that's something. When we're introduced to Billy, go away, Fly. This is not your time. This is my podcast. When we get introduced to
yours.
Benny, brother. I've written
Not
Billy
us.
here. Yeah, it's my podcast. You can get your own Fly. Okay. It's our podcast. I've written Billy here, but his name's Benny. When we get introduced to him, like a bunch of the lads in the bike gang like mock him because he always crashes his bike every time he rides it. Doesn't crash his bike once,
Never
mate.
gets mentioned. Yeah, at all.
Not even close. He has
Yep.
no moments. Apparently, Austin Butler did have a near miss though on some wet leaves while filming, but that's just real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the relationship kind of like you see the meeting, and then the next thing you know they're kind of married, and then it's kind of like you've got your wife, and you've got the motorcycle club who's your number one. It's the club. It always was.
Yeah.
It was always going to be the club.
Always the club.
And then at the same time, it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and new weirder characters are turning up who may have their own issues from like wars that are happening and drugs and things, and people are out of control.
Yeah, without going too heavily into the spoilers, obviously there's characters that get added in. Obviously Norman Reedus' character comes in with a legitimate backstory. He's brought into the gang or the riding club in a kind of off the cuff sort of way, but he's one of them. He's part of that group, part of that society, just from a different part of the country. Then later on, without going into the spoilers, there are others that turn up very much more of a we need somewhere to belong, and they start taking it from its relatively nice beginnings. I don't know how to put it in a better way.
It has, it definitely
humble
has
beginnings,
humble, polite beginnings of a racing club and people hanging out with it in their little somewhere to go and talk about bikes and race and things, and then it slowly becomes, oh no, they'll burn down a pub or a bar, as I suppose technically it is.
But even that obviously that scene isn't a spoiler. It's in the trailer. But even that action kind of fits. Like, it was a core group. One of the members of the core group almost got crippled, so they go a little bit over the top. It's probably the point where you see Johnny realizing how much power they actually do have, but at least there's like this sort of maybe honor among thieves idea of it. Like, this is what we do, we look out for our own.
Yeah.
Later on, when the others get added, it's now we're going to attack our own if they don't do exactly what we think it should be, even though it's not what Johnny says it should be. Because people don't know who Johnny is. Like, people don't know who Benny is. People don't know who Benny's wife is in a specific scene, which I know you know. No one else would have done that. Like, it's
the original gang wouldn't have done that.
It's got too big. It's its own monster.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think we should move into spoilers. We've kind of skirted around a few things. If we want to say anything else, we can do quite happily. There might be a return of a segment of mine, which I'm looking forward to. But it's going to get a thumbs up from me. And I'm going to be honest, I was a little surprised by that because I didn't know really what to expect from this film. And I thought maybe this will be just not my cup of tea. Turns out, I don't know if I was just in the right mood. It was my cup of tea. I very much enjoyed it.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I thought I'd go in it enjoying it because I do, like I say, I like these documentary style things. I expected it to be a lot more brazen about the subject matter. I expected a bit more gore to it. I expected there to be a bit more depravity.
Yeah, I think that's all
quite polite about it.
It is a very polite little film, isn't it, for the most part? Yeah. There's not much going on, like in terms of gore and violence and stuff. Really, ultimately.
Yeah, there's 2 points of arguably gore. The first person, Big Fat Joe, I think his name was. It was Big Joe or Fat Joe, so they call him Big Fat Joe.
I think his name was Jack. Big Jack.
It could be, it's Jack. It's Jack. Sorry, yes.
Played by Happy Anderson.
Yeah. He challenges Johnny for the right to run the club. This week, kind of first see Johnny. He doesn't go crazy in this, but he does what he needs to get by, to survive, to keep control. He bites the guy's leg and he breaks his finger backwards, which not a fun thing to look at. As a man who's broken many fingers. And then, it's just after that when Benny, he refuses to take off his colours in a bar that they don't usually frequent. So people beat the crap out of him, throw him out. He defends himself, cuts one of the brothers' faces, and the other one gets a shovel and almost takes his foot off.
Yeah, proper
that one wasn't fun to look at Yeah,
that got
like, that is
that got big wins from everybody in my screen.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, oh jeez.
Same. But they could have gone so much worse with a lot of this. Like even the amount of knife fighting in it, they could have shown more cut and gore, and they didn't. It's tastefully done because it's not needed to drive the story, and I like that. I don't like gore for the sake of gore. The finger thing and the foot thing, unfortunately, they kind of are necessary.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm okay with that completely.
Yeah, a little goes a long way, as opposed to other films
Yes.
we've seen this year. Boy Kills World, for example, a lot of gore in that film, and I think one of our criticisms was this needed to be an 18? Did it need all this gore, or could it have been dialed back and then it could have seen a bigger audience and more people could have enjoyed it? Like, what was it actually adding other than a selling point, but to fewer people?
No, I get that.
I've got just a couple of spoiler things I'd like to talk about specifically. Did you think Benny was dead the entire time, like based on the later interviews?
No, if I'm honest.
So I was getting that vibe.
Now you've mentioned it, I 100% see how you can think that. I just didn't.
Interesting.
I thought from the beginning it was very much. I thought they had done the whole leave the gang moved away, but then when I was watching the film, I kind of thought most of the recording was obviously before all of that, so it was kind of obviously catching as it goes along. I didn't really. How can I put this? I'm not making a lot of sense, and it's really upsetting me. I thought the way that the film ended is what had happened, but I thought it was being recorded at a time when obviously he was away and she didn't know if he was going to come back. So it was kind of like it's 75% way through the story, flashback, and then the last 25% up to date, or arguably it's the last 5% or 2% or whatever. But that sort of idea that it's mainly flashback and then live. But obviously that's not it either. But I do get what you mean. It would make perfect sense if she was just recounting the life of her husband.
Yeah, when at the end of the film, they're in Danny and Kathy are interviewing in the kitchen kind of area, and then she's talking about him, and how eventually he's like, we worked out and moved to Florida with a cousin to work, and it pans through the kitchen, and you see him outside talking to presumably the cousin, and he's fine and chill. But yeah, before that basically the segments from before with the film in that interview kitchen scene, I was like, he's dead. He's absolutely dead. There's not a chance he's still alive. So,
and if I'm honest, that would have been an easy way for extra drama.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of happy they didn't. Like, that is such an easy throwaway plot point to just be like, oh, now everything's sad and it deserves more interest than it does. No, sometimes life is just like this. It's a bit mundane. Like at the end, Benny is listening to bikes in the distance, and he's just into his like mechanic life now, and obviously he smiles to his wife and stuff, and maybe there's some drama going to follow afterwards. But yeah, that's just life. Sometimes the right thing to do is live your happy life, and
and you hate happy endings.
Crazy.
You're like, happy endings, yuck.
I
no,
do.
thank you.
I truly do.
My other,
I just think they're overdone.
my other kind of point is, Cockroach. One of the characters is called Cockroach. You meet him really. He's there from the start. He eats bugs. That's kind of his gimmick. He wants to leave the gang, and he tells a bunch of the newer guys who then beat him up because you're not allowed to leave the gang. But so Johnny takes it into his own hands after a discussion with Cockroach. Cockroach wants to leave so he can be a police officer and sit on a Harley Davidson all day and get paid. Great life vision. He's like the only one who has a truly happy, well, I suppose Kathy and Benny have a good ending, but his picture towards the end is he's got a kid, he's a cop, he's having a great time. Anyway,
he's got a new mustache.
Why? Explain to me, please. Because Johnny goes to Cockroach's house with Benny, shotguns the door open. Cockroach is sitting there, and he's like, all right, stands up. He's like, expecting to die, maybe? Or this may have been pre-discussed. Johnny shoots him in the leg, and then they're done. What did that achieve for the gang? Because nobody was there. Nobody else saw that. It's just like... Yeah. And did Johnny want him to get away? Like, what's he told told people in this scenario?
Yeah, I don't
paid his
know,
dues?
because obviously
Like getting shot?
This comes after they're at a house party. he's mentioning to three of the new guys. New guys have just come back from, I think, Korea or Vietnam, one of the wars.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, he's mentioning he wants to leave the gang and be a motorbike cop. And he goes into the woods to relieve himself. And they decide it's a good idea to beat the living crap out of him with a flaming wooden stick. Benny and Zipco, I think, have to take him to the hospital. Yeah. One of the others. And again, this is kind of where Kathy's whole traumatizing scene happens, which we can touch on if we need to. But I don't know, maybe I had the thought that Johnny was kind of doing it to... He can go back to them and say, oh, yeah, fair enough, he left the club, or he was trying to get away and I shot him. Like, give him a way out of, well, he didn't just run out, we need to go chase him down. Like, he got shot.
Yeah.
But it's very loosely hinted at that, and it doesn't really come across... Like, he doesn't go back to the club and be like, oh, yeah, well, he left, but... Like, oh, he's bleeding. And
I shot him in the leg as punishment for considering leaving. And then we kind of shook hands and left. It doesn't make sense because these new guys are flipping rabid. And they're the law and the things like, you can't leave the gang once you're in the gang. So we're like, what? Are they not? Is there not a risk that they're going to go hunt him down and beat him up? Like, Johnny shot you, but you still escaped. So I'm going to stab you instead. Like, it didn't make sense to me. So it doesn't quite work for you either, clearly. So
no. It was one of the parts that it didn't add up. I think with some context, it'd be fine. And there is, again, an element of Johnny doesn't know how to run the club anymore. Like, he's trying to pander to the old crowd. But he's trying to make sure he doesn't lose it to the new crowd at this point. So I think he's a bit confused about how to do it. And obviously, Benny has this conversation of, like, is this who we are now? Is this what it's come to? And then he just rides off on his bike.
Yeah. And he doesn't come back until, like, the end of the film, essentially. Until after... something happens to Johnny, which takes us brilliantly into you're a bit of a knob section. We're making this great return. Oh, yes. So there's a guy, he's billed as the Kid, played by Toby Wallace, another good performance. He's an unhinged, very aggressive youngster, young adult as you see him. When you originally see him, he smashes up a guy's headlight for the guy having the audacity to beep him because he's standing in the middle of the road and he's like, get out of the road. You see him beating up, presumably, his old man and threatening his mother, or at least caregivers, so he can go off on his bike ride. Him and some mates want to join the gang, and they get rejected. Johnny's not feeling their vibe. They're too young and things. Eventually, the Kid joins another chapter of the Vandals. Communication not the best. You need to send out some memos. Go and listen. Don't let the Kid in. I don't like his vibe. Which allows him, because now he's a member, he's now allowed to challenge Johnny for leadership, which is a dumb rule, by the way. Why would a non-leader of a different chapter be allowed to challenge the leader of the original chapter? Yeah. Sort your rules out, lads. And then, so he challenges him to a leadership contest. Johnny offers him fists or knives. He says knives. Johnny's like, no problem. And then he just shoots Johnny. Like, who brings a gun to a knife fight? That's very rude. And I thus consider you a bit of a knob, mate.
No, and it obviously fits down the fact that, like, it was this honor among thieves thing. Like, you can do what you need to do, but there are rules and you follow the rules. And Johnny, as much as he's maybe not perfect, but he is a man of his commitment. Like I say, the first one is fists and he fights the guy. Ooh, 1 sec. Sorry. Tegan's calling me and I just hung up on her.
It's getting phone calls.
I know.
Unbelievable.
I've lost my chain of thought now. Oh, yeah. He's very much... it leads the whole way that the gang or the bike club goes. There's two members that watch Johnny get shot, and then they kind of just keep riding with them because they're too scared to do anything else. Like, there's no backbone in it anymore. Johnny at least had that.
Yeah.
Without him, it does kind of descend into chaos a bit more. And obviously, they do this like roundup at the end of... They start doing... drugs and gun running and prostitution, and it becomes a gang, illicit. Basically it becomes rather than a club, it becomes a gang. Yeah. So, which not a good way, not a good legacy.
No, I wouldn't say so.
Another point, just very quickly, because I assume we're getting close to wrapping up. I do like the point where Kathy's talking about, like, men don't cry at this point. She only ever saw her dad cry twice, and Benny never cried. No matter what happened, never cried. And at the end, when he finds out that Johnny's dead, and he kind of cries onto her shoulder, it's a nice...
He breaks down. Yeah.
Obviously, it's
his dad, kind of.
It's pushing... Oh, yeah, very much his father figure, hell yes. it's very much pushing on this macho aesthetic of you don't cry, you shouldn't cry, never cry. However, big events, absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Don't know how I feel about that message, but it was really well done for the story, and it really hits home. Like,
I think for the time period,
it's
it's message appropriate. I don't think it's not a message they're trying to say today, like in today's 2024 years. Only cry when your father figure dies, and not when someone almost takes your ankle off with a spade. That's not the message they're saying. It's just how it was at the time.
My very, very, very last thing, I promise you, because I think we're overrunning quite a bit.
No, go for it.
Are we not bad? Okay. Obviously, Tegan talks about costuming in this. Tegan talks about costuming when we watch films, and apparently the costuming in this was outstanding, but also very time appropriate, well made. The fact that Johnny's jacket is more sort of cinched and tapered towards the waist is very much how English jackets would have been at the time, based on the Wild One, which was Marlon
Brando. Yeah, don't they show that film in the movie?
Is it Marlon Brando?
Yeah, I think it is. Young Marlon Brando. I'm pretty sure.
Why do I think it was James Dean?
I don't think it's James. It doesn't matter. Does it?
It doesn't matter. Anyway.
Pretty sure I'm
right.
No,
it's correct for the time period. They're well made. It looks good. Everything is worn very nicely as well and stained very well. Like, people are wearing oil-stained and dirty white vests, and it all looked convincing. It wasn't... Yeah. And even things like, this is Tegan's thing, not mine, the bras that they were using for costuming, apparently they're right shape for the period. Fine, I don't know, but I'm going to take a word on it.
The costuming segment with Beardy, who kind of knows what Tegan told him.
I listen sometimes. Yeah.
Well, there we go. Brilliant. I enjoyed the film. Surprised somewhat.
Very much.
And there you go. There's some spoilers, extra spoilers. I recommend it, personally.
Same.
Would you like to do the outro?
Yeah, my favourite point where I take the outro and destroy it and ramble on for ages. No, this one's going to be a lot more succinct. Once and always, thank you for watching and or listening.
Thank you.
YouTube, you get to see us and listen to us, and put us on a big screen. It'd be great. Make us real, it'll look like we're sitting down with you. It'd be fantastic. If you want to do Spotify, please listen to us whilst driving, sleeping, whatever. As always, we are on Spotify. Help us. We need to get the video rights on Spotify as well, so everyone can see us. They need to see us more. As always, you can find Bobby on Twitch as Bobby Android. I apparently never going to stream ever again.
That's a lie.
Don't find
he told me earlier he's ramping up for it. His room's getting more streamery. He's got a new mic set up. Oh, he's ready. He's back. He'll be back.
He's ready. He's back, baby. He's not now. So find Bobby for now. Until then, we'll have another episode probably next week.
I'm building this
Bobby
week on stream. It's the Millennium Falcon, the new one they released. It's the slightly smaller version. Come watch. That's Wednesday. This will be out of date really soon.
Come watch the thing that happened 2 days ago live. But yeah, thank you for listening. I hope you've liked our rambling. And Bobby, do your outro.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and watching, of course. We will see you next time. Have a good one. Bye!